Hi, I'm Candice Stokes. I'm a freelance fashion designer. I'm here with Arkive today, and I'm going to teach you about hemming pants. Okay, we're gonna get started with the tools that you're going to need to get the job done. Measuring tape, preferably one that is as long as the thing that you are wanting to measure. I really like a fabric measuring tape. It allows you to get around those little curves if you're having to measure, let's say, an armhole or something like that. So a fabric measuring tape is always nice to have. You're going to need either a handy pair of scissors. These are amazing fabric shears. I like to use an 18" by 2" see-through ruler. It is super handy when you're doing hemming or anything with sewing or patterning, honestly. And I like to use a piece of tailor's chalk. If you don't have tailor's chalk, you can use anything else that's going to be washable on your pants or on whatever you're hemming. And if you need pins, that's always helpful. A seam ripper so that you can open the existing hem. A tracing wheel sometimes comes in handy. And I have some other options here if you're hemming your pants. So this is stitch witchery, or this is an adhesive that's activated with heat, so with your iron. And then you can always sew by hand. So I have my handy dandy hand sewing needles and a thimble. Okay, a little bit about thread. So depending on what material you are hemming, you're going to want to use a different thread. So these are going to be 100% cotton threads. Those are going to be used on natural materials like cotton or linen. The reason why you're going to want to use a different thread for those materials is, think about your jeans, right? As you wear them, as you wash them, the color changes, it patinas, it fades, it gives you that really cool worn look, right? You can either get a poly core with a cotton wrap, so that means that the outside of the thread is going to fade with the garment, versus a polyester. This is going to be a polyester thread and it will not fade. So if you are hemming something that is polyester or nylon, anything that is acrylic, non-natural, you're going to want to use something like this so it doesn't fade on you. All right, let's get started. So today I'm going to be hemming this pair of jeans for my good friend Tiger. If I'm going to be marking these on someone, I want them to be wearing them, and I want them to be wearing the shoes that they're going to be wearing with them often. I know that I only need to take 1 inch off of these, so I'm actually going to turn them inside out. Okay, so to ensure that you're going to make the inseam of the pant, which is from your crotch point down to your ankle, so you're gonna start measuring from the crotch point, wherever that is, and you follow down, and yet, so see, this is where the curved lines come in handy, and that's why having this fabric measuring tape is super, super handy. So if your legs are slightly different on either side, just accept that about yourself and hem your pants accordingly. Okay, so I'm going to mark 1 inch off of these. So you have to currently open up the existing hem. So you want to use the pointy edge of your seam ripper, put that into that seam, start that thread, you'll kind of hear it, and if you're pushing too hard, you're probably doing it wrong, and you want to make sure that you're not putting this all the way through the fabric. So once you get that started, you want to switch to the little red dot underneath the fabric, and then you're just going to put some tension on that seam, and then you just slide this through, and you should be able to maybe hear it if I put it close enough to the mic. Satisfying. And you can go all the way around, making sure that you're keeping that point up so you're not going to be ripping any of the other parts of the fabric. The fabric that you're working with is definitely going to determine how tricky it is. So if you're working with something that's stretchy, you're going to want to use either a zigzag hem, or if you're fancy, you can do a cover stitch, but that is a whole different type of machine. If the fabric itself is going to stretch, you need the thread to stretch as well. Iron! I need the iron! So now that you have your iron in your ironing board, make sure it's nice and hot. And since I'm working on 100% cotton, I'm going to put it on a cotton setting, and I'm gonna use high steams. That way we can get all these really intense creases out of here. I always found it so interesting. So when I started working at Levi's, when we would do hems on the stonewashed jeans, whenever you would take the hem out, you would have sand all in the hem. And at first I was like, this is disgusting, you know, like what are these people doing in these jeans? And then I realized that it was actually the stone washing. For those of you who don't know, stone washing is how you get a really cool effect. Maybe we can do a little overlay here on your jeans. And so that's going to give you a really special wash, a unique wash. You guys have seen it everywhere. And so they actually use stones in their huge dryers, and that's how they get that effect. These are being a little stubborn, so I'm going to increase the steam, make sure it gets nice and flat, because we're going to be working on this surface. If there's any remnants of that previous thread, go ahead and take that out, otherwise it's gonna be stuck there forever. Let's say I wanted to remove 1 inch from these, right? So this is the previous fold line, so 1 inch is going to be here. What you're going to want to do, that's going to be the final length of the garment, right? So what you want to do, since we're going to be doing the same double fold we have here, that's going to be a 1/2 inch and another inch, and then that'll be the final. So what you need to do from the final length of the garment is add that 1/2 inch and another 1/2 inch, so 1 whole inch, to this line. So this is the final length plus 1 inch. This is what we're marking. Make sure that both of your legs are aligned. And what I'm doing is using my see-through ruler to see the mark that I made previously. This is why it's super handy to have. And what I'm gonna do is make sure that everything is nice and flat. I'm gonna take that inseam and put my chalk line on that middle line. So that means I have 1 inch of ruler on this side, making sure everything is nice and aligned with the grain line of the fabric. Mark that. This is the best secret I've ever learned. Are you ready? Keeping these nice and flat together since they're both mirrored, just move this guy up. Hold your ruler nice and flat, and then you're simply going to mark there as well. So that way you have the same mark on both pants. So that's gonna be your cut line, which is really nice and handy. I'm gonna go ahead and mark this original line on the back pants as well, just so that we can have both the final length of the garment and the cut line on there. Now you have both legs of your pant marked. Now what you can do is cut along that second mark. This is the final length of our garment. I know I'm repeating myself, the final length of the garment, and this is your seam allowance. So you're gonna wanna keep that. So if you feel confident and your shears are strong enough, you can cut through both layers of your pants. For jeans, that's quite a lot of work for your shears to do. So if you are not confident in your ability to cut through both of these, you can cut one by one, which is what we're gonna do here today so you guys can see. I'm gonna cut on the top side of my chalk line. Okay, toss that to the side, put it in your scrap bin, because you know, you can make that into a lot of things. Ta-da! Okay, so now we're gonna get the iron back out. We're gonna iron that seam allowance down and then move into sewing. So here we have 1 inch as we marked previously. I'm gonna do this so you guys can see where I'm going to be marking. This isn't absolutely necessary for you to do in your steps, but it does help. So that's gonna be your 1/2 inch mark and your 1/2 inch mark. So what's helpful here is that since this is double the length, what I can do is take the end of my pant and I'm going to just match it up to that first chalk line. And that's going to be that 1/2 inch on top of a 1/2 inch, like a little sandwich. Make sure you get anything that's meltable away from the iron. What I would do is take each one of your seams and fold it down that 1/2 inch to that line. If it's helpful for you to make this mark around the entire pant, feel free to do so. Okay, so what you're gonna do is fold there at your inseam and out your out seam. And what I'm doing is folding down a 1/2 inch to meet that 1 inch line. And then I'm kind of just holding my seams to make sure that they're not going to split open very much. If that's a little hard for you to do not be hard on yourself. I've been doing this for a really long time. Okay, I'm gonna take your very hot iron, stay away from your fingers, and you're gonna wanna press. I have the steam fully up at this point. So you kind of want to let that cool and set, kind of like when you're straightening your hair or doing like curlers or something, like a curling iron. You want it to kind of get cool so that it sets before you move it. Sometimes you can use like the other part of your garment to kind of take the heat out of there and some of that steam, and it helps set it a little bit quicker. There is a really cool tool called a clapper that you can use, and it's like a piece of unfinished wood. And that's really helpful if you're doing like tailoring or anything like that where you're working on really delicate fabrics. Okay, so now that this is set, you're going to take that second fold, being mindful of not pulling on that seam, and you really want to get it nice and tight in there, okay? So I'm not folding and you can feel, you know, a big gap here. You really want to roll it right on that edge to make it nice and tight. That's going to be key. And again, I'm pinching here, pinching here. Okay, rolling those around, putting a little bit of tension. And as you can see, as I'm setting this in place before ironing, I'm kind of tightening it up, right? And rolling it down. So that's going to give you that nice kind of production, off the production line hem, instead of it being kind of fat and like a little pillowy, right? Now taking a really nice look at what we've done here, and they are the same length. So we are good to go and bring it over to the sewing machine. When you start sewing, make sure you're doing a back tack, so reverse a few stitches. Stay nice and tight with that hem if you need to. All right. Jump over that bulk. Take your time if you need to crank the hand wheel on these machines that are a little less hardy than an industrial sewing machine. A lot of people that work with denim actually use pliers or a hammer, honestly, and like squish where all of those big hem bulk is. And that way you can make it a nice transition when you sew over it. My grandmother always said if you do not trim your tails when you're sewing, then you're lazy. So listen to my immigrant grandmother and make sure that your tails are nice and clean. All right, so at that point, you got your hem all finished. Okay, so this has been my How to Hem Your Pants masterclass. Again, I'm Candice Stokes. I'm a freelance fashion designer, and I'm so excited and honored to be doing this with Arkive. If you want to learn more about me, check out my Meet Your Makers only on Arkive.